It all kicks off with this tiny blue lizard just vibing and taking a peaceful nighttime stroll through a spooky forest. But the second it hears a weird noise, it stops right in its tracks. A little further ahead, some orcs are chopping down trees while chatting about helping out their bros. Out of nowhere, an energy blast cuts through the dark and smacks one of the orcs. Completely off guard, the hefty guy hits the dirt hard from the impact, while a squad of elves pushes forward flexing their weapons. He's screaming in agony. Grabbing his bow, a try-hard elf asks how they can be so basic and uncultured. He orders everyone to surrender, calling his enemies a bunch of pests ruining the woods. Right then and there, a wild brawl breaks out between the two factions in the pitch black. Using the chaos to his advantage, an orc charges Send, gripping his axe. But the elf dodges the attack like it is nothing and calls the whole attempt embarrassing. Knocking another glowing arrow, the archer warns he is about to send the creature on a permanent vacation just like his buddies. Suddenly, the entire battlefield lights up with this blinding green glow. An absolute unit of a dragon shows up, blasting a devastating wave of energy straight at the elves. When the beast lands, the orcs hype up the arrival of the forest lord, totally relieved. Right after the blast, the dragon touches down heavy on the ground. The creature coughs up some ketchup and barks at the orcs to grab their crew and fall back. Looking unsure, a roughed-up orc asks what is going to happen to their turf. Looking around at the wrecked environment, the whole scene is just a complete mess. The boss confirms they are dipping out of the area, but he drops a heavy warning. Flapping his wings with serious main character energy, he makes a hardcore vow. The promise is made in the name of the big boss who controls beginnings and endings in the swamps. Letting out an epic roar, he crowns himself the Lord of the Green and officially claims the title of Green Dragon. Seeing this, his squad gets hyped, yelling that they will totally take back their turf from those snobby elves. Full of rage, the beast agrees and promises the payback is going to be absolutely merciless. Right then, a hidden voice mocks such a grandiose promise coming from a dude with such a basic title. Before he can even react, the green dragon takes a colossal energy beam straight to the face. The hit is so insanely strong that he gets yeeted backward. Unbelieving what just happened, the orcs panic and literally drop their weapons on the ground. Out of the glowing light, a golden dragon pulls up, delivering a ridiculously overpowered strike. The golden dragon's ruthless beatdown on the green commander just will not stop. He trash-talks his opponent, calling him a useless bottom-tier shell. Freaking out, the orcs scream that the golden majesty has entered the chat. Taking advantage of the high ground, the glowing beast attacks again and totally wipes the floor with everyone. Spitting red, the green lord demands to know who gave this intruder the right to wreck his hood. The opponent just smirks, basically laughing at how clueless this guy is. Dripping with arrogance, he flexes that he is the original entity of this universe. The shiny beast takes to the sky, charging up a ridiculous amount of energy. Claiming to be the ultimate boss, the creature preps his finishing move. He justifies it to the elves hanging around, saying he will not let his holy kingdom get corrupted by the dark side. Then, he focuses a massive ball of light aimed at completely erasing those dirty beasts. Refusing to take the L, the green leader tries to block it and demands an end to all this ego. With pure sarcasm, the original entity praises his opponent's final words. Showing zero chill, he drops the light attack, wishing his rival a nice long eternal nap. A massive boom swallows everything in the area, leaving zero trace behind. The green dragon's shell takes a nosedive into the void while he curses his absolute garbage luck. In his final seconds, he totally wishes he had the fiery firepower of the red dragon, or maybe the big brain strats and relentless waves of the blue dragon. That way, his payback against that golden snob would be a sure thing, as his life force shrinks down into an egg. Out of nowhere, a hand-wearing standard-issue army gloves grabs the glowing egg tight. Curious, the masked soldier checks out the weird loot he just picked up. Amazed, he notices these glowing green patterns pulsing on the shell. Chilling on the dirt, the soldier stays hyper-focused on this bizarre artifact. The whole vibe shifts now, dropping us right into World War III on the Asian front lines. Inside a dusty tent, that tiny lizard is snacking on bugs fed to him with tweezers. The guy playing zookeeper is Sergeant Legion, who wraps up his chore and starts cleaning his gear. Right then, a lower-ranking private crashes the tent looking for the squad leader. Hearing that the maintenance check is done, Jian jumps up fast. Grabbing his rifle, the officer says he is already on it. He dips out of the tent and walks through the chaotic, noisy trenches of the base. When he gets there, the sergeant asks for the rundown of what is going on. One of the grunts reports that a local kid came down from the mountains looking for them. The kid is carrying a little white puppy in his arms while trying to barter some stuff. The boy's whole game plan is to trade the pup for some rations. With zero emotion on his face, John straight up orders them to tell the kid to get lost. The cold-blooded command leaves everyone in the squad completely shook. Not caring at all about the awkward vibe, the sergeant turns around and starts walking away. Panicking, the kid runs up and grabs the sergeant's sleeve. Worried things are about to get physical, one of the subordinates yells out his rank. Staring dead-eyed at the quiet kid, John has all his men convinced he is basically an ice block. In their minds, the sergeant has no feelings and operates purely like a battle-hardened NPC. Yanking his arm hard, the sergeant shakes the kid off. The boy takes a step back, terrified he is about to get wrecked for being so bold. But, pulling a massive plot twist, Jian tosses a few cans of food his way. As the kid breaks into a massive, relieved smile, the underling admits they would all be history if it was not for their leader. Getting curious during mealtime, the kid asks what the sergeant did before the world went crazy. Hearing that, the soldier next to him starts daydreaming about their commander's backstory. He reminisces about the chill, easygoing days they used to have at the base. Suddenly, the soldier completely freaks out when he sees a pin dropping from an enemy drone flying overhead. Panicking hard, he screams for the squad to dive into the foxholes and grab the heavy artillery right now. Up above, the drones are zooming toward their target, dropping grenades like crazy. Without missing a beat, Lee Jian sprints straight into the open danger zone. Desperate, the other guys try to shout and point out where the surprise attack is coming from. That officer screams at the sergeant, trying to stop a total disaster. But a massive explosion rocks the area, knocking a bunch of guys off their feet. The panic levels up when someone yells that staying out in the open is basically a guaranteed game over. The officer shouts, ordering him to fall back before his timer runs out. Completely ignoring orders, Jian dives into the dirt, laying down cover fire to protect a wounded rookie. The shots totally shred the drone, but they also expose the real truth about the sergeant's past. Before the world went up in flames, this supposedly stone-cold dude was happily working at a pet shop. His daily grind was literally just feeding lizards and treating the animals like absolute royalty. Looking at the terrariums, he thought anything that breathed was the cutest thing ever. Giving all his attention to those little critters was his genuine happy place. Now, the current reality forces him to drag busted-up squadmates through heavy enemy crossfire. And even though he was constantly leveling up his rep and getting praised by the top brass, the heavy burden of reality was crushing him, stacked on top of the physical burnout from the war zone. His only real goal was to log off from this mess and live a super basic, quiet life. He just wanted to spend his days babying fragile animals that had no business being in a war. Wasting no time, he launches himself into the air, reaching out to block the incoming threat. Gripping the explosive tight, his deepest, truest wish just begs for a way to survive this. The metal casing reflects in his eyes as seemingly freezes for one agonizing second. The soldier curls up on the ground, hugging the explosive and bracing for an imminent game over. His face is drenched in sweat from the insane tension, just waiting for the big boom in his final moments. Then, he pops his eyes open, completely stunned that the thing didn't go off. Looking at his hand, he realizes the grenade magically turned into that weird glowing egg. Out of that shell booms an epic voice, claiming to be the Dark Lord of the forest. Keeping up the dramatic monologue, the being brags about controlling the circle of life in the swamps. Flexing his mythical title, the entity drops a firm command, demanding the soldier become his servant. The green dragon's overwhelming presence makes itself known, forcing the human to raise him. The sergeant, however, just stares at the whole circus without saying a single word. The magical entity tries to scare the dude using a super intense, terrifying glare. With absolutely zero chill, John drops the item on the dirt like it is literal garbage. Furious at the disrespect, the monster roasts the guy for trashing his divine vessel after getting chosen. Completely unbothered by the yelling, the soldier quick draws his sidearm from his belt. Mocking the useless flex, the giant lizard calls him a clueless noob, just like everyone else in his dimension. He brags that his ghost-like form is an overpowered mashup of his past lives. Labeling the human an uncultured barbarian, he guarantees regular guns will not even scratch his projection. But the loud click of the gun being cocked right at the egg makes the entity backpedal instantly. Sweating bullets, the dragon tries to lighten the mood, suddenly hyping up the soldier's bravery and big brain. Totally confused by this glitch in reality, the officer asks what server he just loaded into. Still pointing the piece, the soldier bluntly asks if he actually clocked out during the blast. Trying to look majestic again, the beast nods and says yeah, that is basically the deal. Thinking only about his squad, John wants to know what happened to his rookies and the kid. The beast gets salty that he handed out a literal second chance at life and the human is worried about NPC problems. The silent treatment comes courtesy of the gun barrel pointing straight at the shell on the ground. Feeling backed into a corner again, the creature admits he actually has zero clue what happened to them. Deep down, the entity is shook by how insanely unfazed this regular dude is. He is super annoyed that he totally failed the vibe check and lost his alpha status in 2 seconds. Curious about the dodgy answer, the officer asks how the beast doesn't know if he is the one who pulled the strings. The being admits he made the call, but explains that the server transfer energy wasn't from his own stats. The beast flashes back to the exact second he got wiped out by the golden enemy's cross-dimensional attack, getting aggressively dragged to the game over screen, completely unable to block the hit. As his consciousness started fading into the massive dark void, his HP was basically at 0. Until a ping echoed in his head, along with some heavenly voice dropping a name Bix. A menu screen popped up out of nowhere, forcing him to pick a new caretaker ASAP. Mind blown by the UI, the lizard realized he desperately needed a carry to protect him and keep him in the game. In that split second, he spectated the soldier's wild move, diving headfirst into total danger. He saw a cold, calculated mindset in him, straight up matching the old-school Blue Dragon bloodline. But at the same time, the guy had the ruthless, unhinged energy of the Red Fire Lords. Then he remembered that wholesome clip of the guy babying a tiny turtle. The beast puffs up his chest, totally convinced he made a galaxy brainplay by betting on this dude. Not getting this whole heavenly voice lore, Jian asks what this weird Bix fanfic is even about. Right then, an electronic chime goes off, and a floating hologram window boots up, welcoming the user. Staring at the floating screen, the guy reads the tutorial on how to navigate the mechanics of this weird new map. Hyped about the pop-up, the lizard shouts that it is 100% the voice of the world builder. The soldier inspects the high-tech gadget in his hands, trying super hard to process this absolute fever dream. The beast celebrates the dev's direct patch right after that golden gecko ruined the server stability. a brand new floating menu pops up asking the dude to select the race he wants to main in the system. The options list the built-in independence of humans, the massive tank stats of dwarves, and the philosophical snobbery of elves. Just seeing that last option makes the monster instantly lose his mind, yelling that the only good elf is an unalived elf. The green spirit screams that the real PvP kings are the orcs and that they are the absolute unit of this meta. Dazed by the reptile's try-hard energy, John checks the screen, trying to figure out what this orc nonsense is all about. Then, the system locks in the orc race as the official choice. The officer is left confused about how the game just auto-selected that for him. Next, a prompt explains that because he picked a barbarian class, his leftover points will turn into buffs, maxing out his leadership and riz. A magic circle spawns on the ground around him as his Dragon Tamer class is activated, sensing up the dimension jump. He quietly wonders what these domination and charisma stats actually mean in real life. Right after, the guy looks up and sees the massive glowing energy of the green beast hovering right in front of him. The monster announces that the golden meta is getting nerfed soon and the emerald era is making a comeback. Keeping up the epic monologue, the screen tasks the crossover player to go wreck that golden ego. The entity doubles down, ordering the soldier to carry him to a respawn and help him build an insanely overpowered army. Cutting off the cheesy villain speech, the shooter just casually points his pistol right at the floating ghost. Annoyed that the guy has zero attention span, the creature tries to resume his TD talk before getting hit by another warning shot. The tiny green shell goes back to floating all alone and quiet in the void, without the giant hologram. Right then, a massive flash lights up the sky, dropping the official loading screen for the dimension hop. While free falling through a star-filled void, the soldier thinks about how he only ever wanted to be a pet sitter. Deep in thought during the drop, he remembers that was his final wish before getting yeeted away by the unknown admin. He feels super bummed realizing the cosmic dev completely ignored his actual preferences. It hits him that the system completely ghosted him on the map and the type of pets he actually wanted to take care of. Plunging into what looks like a dark ocean of green slime, the soldier wonders if this is the afterlife lobby. The feeling of being swallowed by the deep sea hits him as his tactical gear starts flying off his body. A system notification pops up saying a level 3 slime got tamed and is now leveling up because it ate some out of bounds loot. Ignoring the pop-ups, the officer tries to grab his floating gun while realizing something warm and squishy is wrapping around him. More notifications spam the screen, showing the slime absorbed his pistol and speed, ran its evolution straight to level 20. About to black out at the bottom of the ocean, he sees the result of his gun getting eaten taking shape right in front of him. The panic spikes as his oxygen bar hits zero and he starts drowning in the watery abyss. Out of nowhere, he crashes into a dark forest, coughing up a ton of water and fighting for his life just to breathe again. Still gasping on the dirt, the guy stares in absolute shock at the weird, multicolored blob he is holding. The tiny beast looks up at its new MC, making a super cute little greeting noise. Getting completely jump-scared by the thing, Gian screams and chucks the little guy straight into a tree. Catching his breath, the shooter looks down at his wet hands and realizes something is severely glitched. Checking out his arms and chest, the soldier is shook to see his avatar got completely redesigned. Standing up in the dark woods, he tries to process his new buffed-up physique, complete with sharp teeth and pointy ears. Sweat rolls down his face as the sheer terror sets in because he has no clue how to play this new meta. Interrupting his identity crisis, the jelly blob bounces right back to its boss, super happy. Freaking out, Gian aggressively pats down his legs through his weapons, only to realize his inventory is totally empty. Just then, a creepy sound grabs his attention, making the guy whip around instantly. He catches the little monster going to town on some weird item in the mud. It takes 2 seconds to realize the thing is literally speed, eating one of his tactical gloves. Mind blown by the absolute disrespect, the officer realizes the pet ate his gear and flags it as a massive threat. Moving like a ninja, the combatant starts inching backward to quietly log out of the area while the pet is distracted by its snack, but his foot accidentally kicks the magical dragon artifact that was still chilling on the dirt. Leaning down super smooth, he scoops up the heavy magic shell with his bare hands, dead silent. Because of the sudden movement, the colorful pet stops chewing and tilts its head, checking the human out. Without a second thought, the soldier grabs the loot and books it through the woods to save his own skin. Gian goes full sprint through the bushes, his breathing getting heavy because his stamina bar is draining fast. Right then, a quick streak of light cuts through the dark, proving there is an aggro enemy right on his tail. The officer's eyes go wide, stunned to see a sharp arrow flying straight for his head. Before he can even pop a defensive skill, 2 little green monsters jump out of the shadows with blades, telling him to freeze. One of them totally ignores the warning and leaps right at the shooter's face, trying to land a critical hit. Keeping that ice-cold veteran energy, the MC stares down the lethal strike without even flinching. Catching the perfect timing, the colorful slime jumps in and tanks the hit mid-air to guard its owner. The little guy wraps perfectly around the dude's arm, turning into a super heavy-duty jelly shield. The fatal arrow smacks right into the magic barrier and deflects off without doing any real damage. Not backing down, the enemy goes for a direct stab to the chest, but the blade just hits the dark tactical vest. With crazy reflexes, Gian grabs the mob by the head with one hand before it can even try another combo. The magic slime stuck to the shooter's arm instantly transforms, morphing into a silver handgun. He locks his cold eyes on the target just as his combat system triggers a unique skill. The barrel of the gun gets pressed dead center on the tiny green invader's forehead. Pulling the trigger with zero mercy, the officer unleashes a brutal red light impact point blank into the creature. Far away from that spot, 2 more of these little mobs are guarding a lit-up house in the dark. Inside the safe house, an older guy is casually chatting with a hooded figure serving up some drinks. Cutting back to the deep woods, a perfectly aimed shot tears through the dark in absolute, deadly silence. The projectile headshots one of the guards, taking the little bouncer out instantly and leaving no trace. An elf warrior rocking green gear touches down smoothly right after sniping her target from a distance. Hiding behind a massive tree trunk, the archer scopes out the enemy base with hardcore focus. She stays posted in the shadows, calculating her next move with a sword on her hip and a super serious look. The camera cuts to a bright morning on a rocky cliff, just as some chaotic noises start echoing from a cave entrance. The ones making all the racket are last night's attackers, who are now strung up upside down and literally shaking with fear. Sweating profusely, the tiny mobs stare up at the absolute unit of a sergeant glaring at them with major boss energy. Having absolutely zero patience for their annoying squeaks, the shooter tells the monsters to shut their mouths right now. Striking a terrifying pose, he makes it crystal clear that nobody gave them permission to make a peep. The harsh order makes the creatures shrink down and clench their teeth instantly, totally spooked by his glare. Satisfied with the crowd control, the soldier sits back down in the dirt by his makeshift campfire, surrounded by scattered gear. Watching the whole thing like a fanboy, the little colorful pet bounces around making cute noises near its owner's camp. Deep in thought by the fire, the officer rubs his chin, trying to read the room. But out of nowhere, the little jelly blob launches itself at him, screaming. The creature smacks right into the soldier's back with some serious force. Thanks to the sneak attack, the shooter gets shoved forward into the shadows. He recovers instantly and pops back up, pinning a green enemy by the neck with a blade after the guy tried to gank him. Using the opening, Jian yanks the jelly ally that was chilling on his arm. The shapeshift passive kicks in, and the monster turns into an exact replica of a tactical weapon. Absolutely terrified, the tiny green monster stares cross-eyed at the revolver barrel pressed against its skull. With a completely deadpan face, the man aims flawlessly at his target. He takes the safety off, setting up the gun for a quick fire action. Without taking a step back, the officer blasts a beam of light straight at the downed enemy. The shot hits the green opponent dead on, making him scream in pain from the energy blast. Spinning his torso like a pro, Jian lands a quick scope on another mob that was creeping close. A bluish goblin's eyes bug out, totally panicked seeing the attack grazing right by him. But his dodge roll fails and he takes the full, brutal impact of the scarlet beam. The little blue guy stumbles, feeling the massive debuff from the hit he just took. Just to make sure, the shooter fires a massive energy burst that straight up deletes the opponent's HP. Once the smoke clears, both tiny creatures are just laid out in the dirt, completely wrecked. Breathing heavy after the speed run fight, the officer keeps his gun up, scanning the zone for more aggro. At that moment, the magic weapon stops being a gun and reverts back to the colorful blob. Chilling out a bit, the soldier sits by the fire and starts logging the fight stats in his notebook. Jotting it down, he figures out that the weird pet actually has a super chill personality. The beast can copy the form of any item it eats, working perfectly until its mana bar runs out. But the veteran notes the damage output is basically rubber bullet tier, incapable of actually taking anyone out permanently. Looking at the tied-up, crying hostages, he writes that his duo partner can only fire 4 or 5 times before needing a cooldown. Done with his notes, Jian grabs his magic device and boots up the virtual assistant. He asks for his GPS coords and the next quest marker, but the gadget just tells him to make a phone call. The screen stays blank, repeating that it cannot find a good answer for his prompts. Super let down by the useless tech, the guy rubs his head, realizing normal strategies are totally busted here. On the other side of the camp, the little blob gets distracted and accidentally bumps into the glowing artifact. The noise grabs the officer's attention, and he just stares at the mystery shell in silence. Then, he remembers the divine boss demanding the warrior respawn him to build an overpowered emerald squad. Holding the mystic shell, the soldier realizes he got kidnapped by the dragon to work as a freelance mercenary. Trying to get some answers, the guy points his gear at the hostages, demanding their attention with a harsh tone. He asks if these tiny dudes are some kind of aliens, leaving the creatures looking completely clueless. Keeping the interrogation going, Jian asks what server they are on, while the little monsters are shook that he is speaking their native slang. With zero patience, the human grabs their leader by the collar and orders him to spill the tea right now. Hearing their panicked squeaks, the soldier drops the mob, realizing there is no way to communicate with the NPCs here. Seeing his jelly bro sitting on the artifact, he figures out that hatching the egg is the only way to unlock the lore. But to get to that point, the man knows overthinking things will just get him wrecked by the next wave of enemies. Making survival his main quest, he decides he needs to locate a safe zone immediately. Soon enough, the officer starts trekking through the brush with his captives to scout the map and avoid camping. Up ahead, a local green mob is raging out, smashing the dirt with a super basic tool. The tiny beast is just brutalizing the ground with a giant wooden log. Hiding in the bushes with his hostages, Jian scopes out the enemy camp to gauge the current threat level. Watching the monster carve a wooden stake, the sergeant confirms that the locals are the real danger zone. Checking out the stash and the portable beds in the enemy camp, he calculates the squad is about a 24-hour hike from the main base. With that in mind, the soldier holds out his hand and signals his colorful buddy to pull up. The blob jumps into the air and instantly shifts into his trusty sidearm. Gripping the piece tight, the soldier figures enemy backup is going to spawn soon and he needs intel like yesterday. Stepping out of the bushes with his hostages, the guy switches up his strat since talking is useless. Holding a stick, Jian points to a little stick figure he drew in the dirt like a total teacher. He thumps his chest, making it super clear who he is to the tiny monsters. Doing it again, the guy points back at the doodle in the dirt, keeping their eyes on the lesson. Right after, the veteran points his finger straight at the two little prisoners tied up in front of him. Guiding the tutorial, he draws a new line in the dirt that stands for the enemy camp with all the tents. To wrap up his game of charades, the officer opens his arms, basically asking for the coordinates to their village. The tiny hostages start whispering to each other, looking like they finally got the memo. Hyped about the chat, the creatures start waving their hands forward, trying to give him the answer. The blue guy waves his hands super happily, shouting out the direction. With absolutely zero hesitation, the soldier presses the gun barrel right against the hyped-up snitch's head. The dude glares at the two beasts with a dark look, laying down the brand new server rules. In maximum intimidation mode, he warns them exactly what will happen if they try to hold back any stats. Pointing at the dirt doodle, the sergeant promises he will use full ballistic force on them. To finish the threat, Jian points to two freshly dug ditches, showing them where the game over screen leads. Terrified by the lethal promise, the hostages shake and point together toward the exact same side of the forest. Staring at the distant hills, the soldier calculates the enemy base is a bit farther out than he guessed. With the waypoint set, the tiny squad starts hiking through the thick woods again. Hidden deep in the leaves, the elf archer is stalking the foreigners' every move with extreme caution. At a rest stop, the guy hands out some beef jerky on a stick as a reward for the prisoners behaving. The tiny creatures start devouring the snacks stolen from their own bags like they are starving. Suddenly, the hostages' eyes bug out as a weird buff surges through their bodies. A bright blue aura starts glowing around them, forcing the officer to back up in a panic with his gun raised. Tossed on the ground near the bags, the system device also starts glowing on its own in the dark. The holo screen pops a notification confirming the tribe members just leveled up from eating the food. A blinding light swallows the captives while the system pings the officer that the two local mobs were successfully tamed. Right then, the floating UI drops a message confirming he just unlocked the basic demon language pack. Hiding in the bushes, the hunter's eyes go wide, completely shook by the cutscene she just watched. Cilia turns around and books it through the plants, grabbing her injured arm. Popping a calm spell, the warrior drops to her knees in a hidden spot and formally checks in to report the glitches to the elders. Massive holograms of the astral commander spawn in the room, ordering the archer to speak up. Keeping her head bowed, she explains she was out by the edge of the dark woods near the human settlement. The fighter reports in a super serious tone that she ran into an orc out in those zones. She details the crazy visual of the makeshift camp just thrown together in the wood. And she swears the intruder was using a max-level mind control spell, which belongs to the Green Lord. The elders listen to the whole debrief without making a single sound. The warrior doubles down on how huge this intel is, waiting for a reply. Thinking it over, one of the VIPs calls the girl by her full gamer tag. He roasts her as someone who lost her archer privileges and asks what her character level age is. Astonished by the random question, Cilia claims to be 150 years old in the current timeline. The boss lets out a massive sigh of disappointment hearing that story. The commander complains that back in his day, the lower levels weren't this rebellious. The elf gets totally confused, not understanding why she is suddenly getting flame. Next, the Veep summons Callion, demanding the Boy of Light log into the chat. Walking in with pure royal swagger, the high-ranking soldier asks what the boss needs. Super annoyed, the spirit asks if the guy cannot even keep his own guild members in check. He thinks the idea of an orc having the Green Lord's buffs is total garbage and vows to ban the entire command chain to fix their reputation. The final order forces Callion to clean up this embarrassing mess himself. Looking back at the kneeling archer, the commander acts like he feels bad for her debuffs. The VIP says he gets why she wants payback for losing her arm and having her archer build ruined. But the elder makes it clear that the Emerald Dragon was completely wiped from the server, leaving 0 drops behind. Since the Golden Leader himself was the one who deleted the opponent, the commander warns that saying otherwise is a bannable offense. Panicking, Cilia tries to argue back and swear she's not making things up. But the entity turns away, calling her report a massive fake news drop sent straight to the admins. The commander ends the call by kicking the girl from the guild for breaking the chain of command. Completely stripped of her rank, the warrior just accepts the ban and drops her head. Back in the dark woods, she collapses on her knees, dealing with the fallout of getting kicked out. Throwing a total tantrum, the archer punches the dirt, calling the elders a bunch of stubborn boomers. Boiling with rage, the girl swears the magic energy was 100% real and figures she got silenced just because she is a useless DPS now. Gripping the grass hard, Cilia flashes back to the trauma of that trash reptile taking her arm. With eyes full of hate, she vows to permanently delete every trace of that beast from the server. Somewhere else in the forest, a bizarre giant reptile is straight up griefing a huge wild bird. Watching the slaughter from a distance, the officer studies the local wildlife's aggro behavior, super curious. The little goblins explain that the fleeing bird actually drops some top-tier meat. Next, a massive armored beast comes strolling down the dirt path. Running away terrified, the hostages warn that the tanky monster tastes like pure garbage. A colossal wild boar covered in spikes spawns in, dropping a terrifying roar. Right after, a giant shelled mammal stomps the ground while the little guys warn that its meat is awful and way too chewy. The duo confesses that their adult tutorial quest was to literally steal the droppings of these lethal mobs. Since they totally failed the quest out of pure fear, the soldier realizes they both got kicked out of their own village. Even though they are banned, the two celebrate their RNG luck for finding the Emerald Lord to carry them. They brag that they are totally fearless now, while the officer quickly reminds them he is not anyone's boss around here. The officer tries to explain he is not an alien, but the creatures hug his leg, refusing to let go of the idea that they all share the same demon origin. To prove their point, they put their green hands next to the guy's arm, trying to show off the matching skin tones. Jian takes a deep breath, totally drained trying to figure out how to unequip these clingy NPCs. The hostages claim there is zero racism among the forest kids. Later on, the campfire is burning bright under the moonlight. The officer pulls an all-nighter guarding the perimeter while the rest of the party sleeps on the dirt. Deep in thought, he remembers that freaky reptile he ran into earlier. He also thinks about the armored bugs and realizes the server hazards are literally everywhere. Sitting in the dead of night, the dude quietly keeps updating his notes in the logbook. The soldier thinks that if he was back in his chill old life, he would be super hyped about these weird pets. Next to him, the tiny colorful blob is knocked out in a deep sleep, zero stress. Suddenly, the sergeant's eyes snap open, sensing a massive glitch in the matrix. With his hardcore battle senses tingling, he focuses up to figure out the sudden shift in the environment. The campfire that was totally safe starts crackling in a super sketchy way. In a flash, the flames go completely wild, turning into a massive pillar of fire. A brutal explosion nukes the whole camp, sending the soldier flying from the blast radius. The magic gadget hits the dirt, flashing a red critical danger warning. Completely panicked, the soldier watches the cutscene unfold in absolute terror. His tiny squadmates scream in agony as they get swallowed by the ultra-hot fire with zero chance to dodge. Dropped to his knees, the guy reaches out screaming in pain, watching the NPCs burn alive right in front of him. Right then, the sound of a boot crushing a dry branch echoes in the dark, proving this was no random server glitch. Instantly, the officer's lethal mode activates, locking his eyes right on the source of the noise. Taking advantage of the window, the little blob speed dashes right back to its commander. With a quick flick, Jian swaps it into his tactical weapon and aims at the leaves, demanding to know who is camping there. Two armed guys get jumped by how fast the survivor recovered from the fire. The camera shows the standoff between the soldier and the pair of human hunters standing near the destructive flames. Checking out the basic skins on the attackers, the military guy is shocked to see they are just regular humans. Realizing they have been spotted, the guys pull their blades and start screaming in some language he doesn't have the patch for. Holding the lethal artifact, the military dude tries to call a timeout. But out of nowhere, one of the little beings jumps in front of him, popping a defense skill. A massive figure rushes in with pure rage while the intruders scream in panic, asking to cancel the duel. Just then, a boot taps the floor super softly. The archer Cilia drops in, parkering through the branches, wrapped in a glowing mystic buff. Using a dash move, the hunter goes all in on the guys right in the middle of the brush. She pulls off an overpowered spin attack that knocks the intruders way back from John. The warrior ends the combo by driving her glowing sword in with perfect accuracy. A flash of light tears through the dark, hitting the target with insane burst damage. The impact is so heavy it launches the enemies into the air right as she lands flawlessly. The officer and his tiny ally are just standing there, completely mind blown by the surprise backup. Laid out in the dirt, the two dudes stare up at the archer looking like they are about to log off permanently. Completely triggered, she trashes them as the Green Lord's garbage and demands they say her title before they get eliminated. Glowing in the moonlight, the girl steps up with major boss energy and calls herself the Luminous Prey. With a face full of absolute fury, she drops her gamertag Cilia Tuscarella. Pointing her weapon, the warrior threatens to wipe out the orc mage and his smelly minions. Holding her combat stance, she swears on the holy light she is gonna wipe everyone here. Giving them the ultimate death glare, the elf flexes her majestic war title again. Totally lost, the soldier and his little monster just listen to the random outlander's edgy villain speech. The hunter keeps up the heroic rant, swearing to completely purge the forest invaders. The officer looks super confused, trying his best to process this chaotic voice chat. He tries to say something in his own language, but the elf claps back in a dialect he also hasn't unlocked. Throwing his hands up to surrender, Jian calls for a truce while the little creature screams in pure panic beside him. Annoyed by the mob's yelling, Cilia figures the pet only makes that noise because it is a low-tier orc. Gripping her blade, the warrior tells the humans to back up, assuming the officer is about to cast some brainwashing hex. Reading her aggro posture, the soldier realizes this lobby is getting weirder by the second. To stop the aggro from escalating, he figures the best strat is popping a warning shot into the sky. Smoothly, the combatant points his tactical piece straight up at the dark clouds. But suddenly, his eyes go wide when he sees a massive error with his gear. The magic tool flashes a low ammo warning and reverts right back into a blob resting in his hand, literally crying. The empty shells drop to the dirt as the military guy stares at his completely nerfed weapon. Locked in, the elf says with an ice-cold face that his magic buffs just ran out. Taking advantage of the cooldown, the warrior dashes in at insane speed, closing the gap instantly. In one fatal swing, she drops her glowing sword with max power. The speed blitz attack slashes right into the chest of one of the green mobs before it could even try to block. Hiding in the grass, the human hunters watch the massive damage display in pure shock. Leaking heavily, the tiny creature drops like a rock into the mud. The little guy screams in agony, taking massive debuffs from the enchanted blade's critical hit. Without dropping her combo, the warrior is already up in the officer's face, charging her next fatal strike. But her eyes bug out, totally stunned by the enemy's pure reflex block. Running on pure military instinct, the soldier uses the barrel of his own gun to parry the blade just millimeters from his face. Punishing the miss, Jian counters instantly with a heavy punch straight to the girl's chest. The brutal knockback sends the archer flying backward through the trees. Gritting her teeth through the pain, the girl struggles to fix her posture as she gets yeeted away. Giving zero room to breathe, the soldier already has his weapon tracked right on her face. Keeping the crosshairs locked, the shooter follows the target as she slides from the punch's impact. The hunter brakes hard, tearing up the dirt with her boots until her slide completely stops. Coughing up red from the hit, she glares at the enemy, absolutely furious at the disrespect. Snapping, the warrior screams she won't spare a low tear scrub and vows to go all out with her ultimate. Summoning the wind spirits, the archer gathers a ridiculous amount of magic aura around her body. She declares she is about to wipe her opponents while the guy just watches the light show looking stressed. Heavy drops of red start leaking nonstop from the officer's busted arm. The officer drops to his knees, dealing with the sharp pain while the tiny creature panic summons him. Sweating cold, Jian curses himself seeing how badly his shooting arm is debuffed. With his fingers shaking like crazy, he realizes in total panic that his aim is completely shot. Knowing he is outmatched, the soldier commands the little pet to run away and save its own skin. Struggling insanely hard to stand up, the military guy promises he will do his best to buy them as much time as possible. But before he can even block, the elf spawns right back in front of him, charging up a devastating attack. Unable to guard, the dude takes a brutal slash right to the chest and hits the deck. Using the map geometry to her advantage, Celia parkers through the branches at a speed that leaves the officer completely shook. With his stamina at zero, the soldier's shaky hand grips the gun hard, trying for one last Hail Mary play. Sweat pours down his face as he desperately wonders if this is going to be his final shot. The warrior runs circles around him, leaving after images that the human eye can't even track. Keeping his veteran chill, the officer tracks the movement, trying super hard to predict the rival's pacing. In a flash, he flicks his aim hard, reading her surprise dash. The second the archer dives in for the finishing blow, she practically walks right into his line of fire. Without a second thought, the military guy pulls the trigger, dropping a blinding flashbang of light. Hiding out, the tiny goblin watches the blast explosion, completely awestruck by the boss's firepower. Right then, an item drops right into the short goblin's hands, making him jump from the impact. He stares confused at the gold hairpin that got shot right off the fighter's head. With her hair flying everywhere, the hunter hits the dirt, completely losing the momentum of her strike. The girl skids across the forest grass, dealing with the heavy knockback from the counter she just ate. With the gun barrel smoking, the veteran gasps for air and wonders if his shot actually connected. Knowing his mana is fully drained, he drops the empty weapon mags onto the dark dirt. Completely burned out, Jian drops to his knees while his tiny ally runs toward him in full panic mode. Freaking out, the little creature cries while holding the jelly blob that looks like it is melting. He screams in terror, traumatized seeing his downed buddy resting on his palms. At that moment, the officer looks at the leftover bits of his magic partner scattered on his hands, absolutely devastated. Suddenly, a super dark PTSD flak hits him, showing the veteran holding a fallen squad mate in his arms. Overwhelmed by the grief, he collapses on the dirt, reliving that absolute nightmare all over again. Right then, the magic system UI pops up a warning confirming the subject's PTSD debuff just activated. Because of that, John throws his head back and lets out a massive roar, triggering an uncapped rage buff. The soldier's sanity gets completely wiped, making way for a dark beast thirsty for a squad wipe. Absolutely terrified by the insane aura, the two little beings curl up into balls on the forest floor. Even the human intruders nope out of there, sprinting away in a panic without looking back. A heavy boot stumps the ground, totally crushing the grass. The officer stands back up, completely hijacked by a terrifying red aura, breathing insanely hard. Eaten up by the rage buff, he pauses and glares dead at the elf hunter still laid out in the dirt. Without hesitating, the dude aggressively reaches out his hand straight for the archer. Hours pass and bright and early, the little green creature is searching the camp for his buddy. The officer is holding the knocked-out elf and turns his head, annoyed by the early morning noise. Confused by the setup, he realizes the rage monster from last night has completely logged off. Instead, the soldier spots a little yellow blob glow right in the middle of the grass. The friendly little creature jumps for joy as the hostage drops its old gamertag. Not getting it, the officer watches the jelly beasts endlessly duplicating themselves all over the ground. The magic device pings on the floor, warning him about a critical error in the code. The screen plays a flashback of an old commander telling him to find his happy place and live in peace. Answering that prompt, a spike-covered blob spawns in, full of energy. Right after, a little pink animal that looks like a pig pops up, confirming the weird passive trait just activated. The UI announces cellular cloning as the base gets completely swarmed by these adorable little pets. Jian hugs a massive pile of the squishy blobs, totally stunned by what is happening. Surrounded by a ton of super cute mobs, the hardcore soldier just freezes with a blank stare. While the guy is chilling leaning against a rock, the warrior finally starts rebooting. Celia opens her eyes and realizes she is chilling in a completely empty, well-lit room. Disoriented, she wonders what exact zone she just spawned into. The nightmare visual of the midnight beast flashes through her brain like crazy. The fear is so intense that the archer's eyes bug out, totally paralyzed by the horror. Jumping up fast, she is dead set on reporting the bug instantly. The warrior swears she will ping the elders about this toxic mage being on the server, but then she touches her head and realizes a super rare item is missing. Panicking hard, the warrior notices her comm's hairpin is completely gone. Shaking with fear, she figures out that her entire party chat with the tribe just got disconnected. For the first time in over 100 years, the girl feels the crushing debuff of playing totally solo. The flashback of the artifact shattering basically ruins all her backup plans. Spiraling into the dark corners of her own mind, the hunter cries, admitting she is terrified. Sliding down the wall, she begs for a carry, calling out to her people's origin tree. The panic levels up, and the girl prays to the light entity not to leave her hanging like this. Just then, the massive skull of the green dragon spawns in, looking ready to swallow her whole. The warrior wakes up instantly, screaming for a rescue while grabbing the shirt of the closest person. But to her shock, the one gently holding her is a human guy with a super chill face. With a soft voice, the mystery hero tells her to chill out and not be scared. The girl is totally amazed hearing that she is in a completely safe zone right now. The caring dude hands her a cup of fluid, telling her to drink it to clear her debuffs. Checking out the weird potion, the elf thinks about how calming his voice is. She feels the warmth from the cup and gets a vibe she has literally never felt before. Taking a sip, the warrior realizes nobody has ever showed her this kind of wholesome energy. Starstruck, if this carry is just a human player or some mythical god tier being. Being super cryptic, he warns that he might be a light entity or a dark boss, totally depending on how she acts. Instantly the illusion shatters, and the orc soldier glares at her asking if her HP is full yet. The soldier hypes up the DOI potion made by the hostages who are sweating bullets nearby. The elf totally freezes with the cup in her mouth, realizing who was actually holding her. Reacting on pure instinct, she spits the entire magic brew directly into the veteran's face. The peaceful morning forest vibes get totally ruined by the screaming in the camp. Trapped in a sleeping bag like a bug, Celia screams, demanding to be let out. Rolling around on the ground, the hunter promises to team wipe all these beasts. Wiping his messy face, the officer tells her with zero emotion that she needs to bow down if she wants to stay in the game. The warrior tries to tell him to shut up, but her lips literally zip themselves shut. Mind blown by her own avatar glitching, she realizes she is under a massive crowd control hex and is completely muted. Absolute dead silence takes over the camp, making the whole vibe super awkward. Jaw dropped, the little green guys hype up the commander's insane skill for taming a snobby elf. The soldier is confused by the praise and wonders who exactly is mind-controlling who here. Trying to understand the mechanics, the human grabs his magic gadget and reads the glowing pop-up. A quick flashback plays of the moment he side-eyed the sketchy potion before handing it to the hostage. Remembering the second he healed the girl, the officer realizes he almost felt bad for her. The log notes say the taming spell basically failed after she drank the slime juice. Because elves have such insane magic resist, the hex only managed to hack her physical avatar, leaving her mind completely free. Thanks to the partial physical hack, the UI unlocked the basic elf language pack for the player. The officer scratches his chin, trying to process this broken logic of taming NPC. He figures that in his past life, this mechanic was strictly for training actual pets. Looking at his tiny allies, Gian wonders if he accidentally turned these dudes into his in-game pets. The sergeant orders the tied-up elf to sit on the dirt. Right after, he commands the hunter to stand up. Annoyed, the soldier tells the hostage to sit back down. Celia groans, super frustrated by the magic mute button, until the human finally unblocks her mic. Absolutely furious, the warrior calls him a fake shaman and vows to assassinate him for all this trolling. But the military guy just tells her to shut it, making the girl rage over getting ignored. As the hostage drops onto the dirt, John realizes he actually has admin controls over her body. Staring at the glowing screen, he wonders if this is just another skill tree he unlocked on this server. Right then, the veteran remembers getting sucked into the zone, realizing he blacked out and all his damage was fully healed. The dude vaguely recalls an insane non-human buff taking over his stat. The terrifying visual of his war trauma flashes back to haunt his brain again. He squeezes his eyes shut, trying super hard to skip this nightmare cutscene. Rubbing his temples, the guy exhales heavily and figures it is just pent-up server lag. Surrounded by the little creatures, the sergeant admits he would be lying if he said he wasn't completely lost. He thinks the crazy events are just spamming him, but war zones have always been like this, and his main quest hasn't changed. Checking the screen, the officer swears he needs to stay alive because he has unfinished business waiting back in his home lobby. With a shout full of pure tryhard energy, he announces that surviving is the absolute top priority right now. Snapping into drill sergeant mode, the military guy orders his new recruits to fall in line instantly. He tells the tiny green dudes he still doesn't trust their loyalty stats, but he is giving them exactly one chance to prove they aren't dead weight. Glaring at the tiny beasts, John makes it clear that in his dimension only brute strength and high defense get you the right to stay logged in. The dude promises to train them to get totally buffed, and as payment, they are going to carry their boss through this zone. The little monsters start the drill crawling through the mud, while the leader yells at them to help him extract back to his world. Celia watches the squad sprinting through the trees as the officer warns that anyone who lags behind gets their guild tags stripped. Pushing the creatures' heads into the dirt, the veteran demands they prove they aren't just squishy meat shields. The duo starts a sparring match with blades, and the guy questions if they actually have the stats to be his right and left hand mains. Punishing a bad read, one of the little dudes lands a critical hit right in the middle of the tactical drill. Shocked by the results, the archer realizes how totally wrong she was about this whole setup. She notices the squishy jelly blob can literally shapeshift into the perfect lethal gear on command. Watching the insane stat boosts, the hunter admits the forest mobs are moving with absolutely flawless strats. Backed by his fully kitted out mini squad, the sergeant radiates some serious top-tier commander energy in the woods. The girl realizes in a panic that this undercover guy has undisputed admin control over his party. Chilling in the bushes, she secretly admits she has never seen anything this OP in her entire 150 years of playing. Further down, the armed green rookies are blasting targets while Celia concludes this leader is no standard mob. The aim training keeps going with the soldiers landing their shots with absolute aimbot accuracy. The magic bullets shred the wooden dummies with zero effort, making the elf even more terrified of what she is seeing. Sweating pure fear, the archer finally realizes this guy is an authentic max-level threat. Using the distraction, she stealth crawls across the dirt, trying to reach her bag without triggering any aggro. The combatant swears she needs to grab her comms gear to report this to the admin's asset, but the officer suddenly spawns in and snatches the gold artifact, coldly letting her know that her phase of the boss fight starts now. Way out in a human settlement, some guy is screaming in a panic, warning everyone about a boss monster spawning in the mountains. The dude asks the whole village why nobody is buying the lore they keep dropping about the forest. Totally exhausted from the morning spam, the village leader sighs, figuring it is just another fake creepypasta. The hunters argue back, super annoyed, swearing they saw a high-tier mage and that even the elf Veep couldn't solo the beast. Spooked by the threat, another NPC suggests they form a raid party fast or ping the local lord. Out of nowhere, creepy shadows render at the edge of the fence, while the leader asks if they seriously think the boss crossed the ocean just to gank them here. Hidden in the dark outside the village, Gian and his tactical squad listen to the NPCs, wondering what hardcore griefers would be doing in a dead server like this.